Come stop and take a trip down on my block, where you see hidden potential, young minds sharper than pencil, and ain't afraid to speak their mind if they got something against you. We standing with you, we tackle issues like civic pride. Hate will cease to exist, let's put our differences aside. From my side to your side, from Dutchtown to South Side, from Penrose to North Side, from Benton Park to Old North, the West End, the West Side. We blessed when we step out, we stand down, rise up, stand together, wise up.
This is StitchCast Studio, produced by St. Louis Story Stitchers in St. Louis, Missouri.
This week, the StitchCast sits down with Seth Treptow to discuss the importance of parks and green spaces in this special edition podcast in the park episode of StitchCast Studio.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of StitchCast. Today we're doing a special podcast in the park, and we're here at the beautiful Laumeier Sculpture Park. And today we have a very special guest with us from Great Rivers Greenway. We have Seth here. Seth, can you introduce yourself to the listeners and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Seth Treptow. I'm the communications manager for Great Rivers Greenway. We're an organization working in St. Louis City, St. Charles County, St. Louis County to create greenways to provide new connections to parks, rivers, streams, and neighborhoods and communities.
Oh, definitely. That's great. That's great. So, yeah, for those of you that haven't heard about that, definitely go look them up. Some great projects that they have coming up that we're going to talk about. And as always, I have some very amazing youth council members from Story Stitcher here with me today to carry this conversation and really get it going. So the first thing I want to talk about, since this podcast is really based around the importance of greenways and parks in our community, I want to ask, what is the benefit? Like, what benefits have you received from, major parks in our community, like the forest parks or the fairground parks or the Tower Groves? Like, what are some benefits that you have gotten from those parks? Like, just your experience.
One of my favorite experiences I had with parks alone is just like childhood, meeting some of my childhood friends that I, come to know to this day. Growing a bond, our friendship on the swings,
Yeah, definitely.
It's the little things that matter.
Yeah.
I just think about like pickup basketball games, and that always been like a community driver. Like, if you don't know anything else, like, you can go there and meet people and just have a good sense of community. But I also take a lot of walks too, so I definitely go through parks. I know that just clears your mind. Always.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I get out of it. When I just spend time outside, I feel like I become a different person. The mind quiets down. I can feel the blood pressure lower. I can feel the heart calm down, and I actually just kind of gain a new connection with what's around me. And by extension, I think I get a little bit more appreciation for the people around me and the animals around me and the wildlife around me. I just feel like it's just a kind of a centering experience.
Absolutely. I can relate to that a lot. Just having those days where, you feel like overwhelmed even, or if you just like, you just need an outlet. It's just like a simple walk in the park, like especially for me, like Forest Park, because it's just so many different aspects of it, and just different things going on in there, and you can definitely hear the crickets and the birds. Like, it's like in the center of the city, but it's like everything about the city, but everything away from the city. Just in that one space. So I think that's really cool. So Seth, I want to ask this directly to you. How did you even get into greenery? Like, was this something that you were always interested in, or did it kind of just find you? Like, what happened?
I would say it's always been part of my life. I would say I was pretty fortunate that I kind of grew up in an area where I was surrounded by green space. Trees, plants, flowers, wildlife have always been part of my existence, and I'm very fortunate in that way. And so, growing up, taking a walk out in the woods with my dad was often part of just a weekend. Going out and playing in the yard was just a Tuesday afternoon. And so it's always just been part of who I've been. And so as I've gotten older and now live in a more urban area, I find that those retreats to that outside green space are just more and more important to who I am. And it's part of the reason what brought me to Great Rivers Greenway, because that's an experience that I've come to realize I've taken for granted.
Yeah.
That not everyone gets that. And so even just doing the small part I do, I know that I am able to help bring that experience to many more people that wouldn't otherwise have it, and that fuels me.
Absolutely. I don't know, this is kind of like a break off of the first question that I asked, but why do you all think that parks or greenways or just greenery period, whether it's a community garden or just like a simple like green lot, like why do you all think that those are important for our community, or do you think they are at all?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear like greenery, usually I think of community gardens, because that's usually like what people are focused on, like how do we grow local food in a food desert. So I was very surprised that like a project like yours was being done. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, actually that would bring a lot of like life to the neighborhoods, because it attracts people. So, you know, you would have multiple neighbors being together or sharing a space together, which I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely. I want to kind of jump off what he said, you know, make it more lively, you know, because it's actually like one of those, I don't know who did the research, but you know, just colors, you know, those bright colors really make you feel better, you know. So like when we did the mural, like we wanted bright colors because we wanted something that'll help the community to like, you know, feel a different way when they walk by, you know what I'm saying, like carry that throughout the rest of their day, you know. So I think definitely seeing those types of things will actually like kind of help you, like even if it's not intentionally, just kind of like diffuse a little bit, you know. It's like really subtle.
I'll give you a little bit of a story about a project we did a few years ago. We were working in the community of Wellston, and we had a chunk of land that became available, several houses that were torn down, and it was actually adjacent to a greenway we were building there. And so we acquired that property, and so it sat there for a number of years. And we're like, we know we want to do something with this. And our initial thought was like, we should build a community garden. And then we actually talked to the people in the community, and they're like, no, we don't need a community garden. We've got many already in walking distance of where you're living. What we need is a full court basketball court. We don't have one. In our community, we don't have an outdoor basketball court. And so we started working with that community and had ambassadors from the community. We met on a regular basis, and we kind of talked a lot about what they wanted from that project. And so about 5 years ago, actually 5 years ago, coming up in October, we opened Trojan Park in Wellston. It has full court basketball, it has multiple playgrounds, and it has a pavilion and a splash pad. And every time I go by there are people in that park. I was just there Saturday, and there was people playing basketball. There were kids playing in the splash pad, and it has become a hub of activity for that community that they didn't have before. And I think again, it's part because it's just that place they can get to. It's bright, it's inviting, and it's fun.
Absolutely. And I think it's important too, you know, when we have those types of things and we put those types of things in our communities, the upkeep of it, you know, because it's so easy for us to get like comfortable, I guess I would say, you know what I'm saying? And then it all just comes, it's like a cycle, you know. So the upkeep is definitely important, but I love to hear that. Another project I want to ask you about that many people that are listening to this podcast probably don't know about is, I guess it's you all's big project that you're trying to do to connect greenways from the north to the south and the east and the west, and then have the central location in the middle.
Yeah, so the project thing you're talking about is called the Brick Line Greenway, and this is a project that's going to have, it's going to go basically from Forest Park in the west all the way to the Gateway Arch on the east, and then it's going to go from Fairgrounds Park in the north down to Tower Grove Park in the south, and it's going to have lots of interconnection in between. And so there's going to be more than a dozen neighborhoods that this will connect, from the north part of the city down to the south part of the city. It's going to connect cultural centers, the Grand Art District. It'll have new connections to the north part of the city to, you know, like the Griot Art Museum or the Griot Museum and North Grand. And it's going to provide a walkable, bikeable connection to parts of the city that you know, aren't very well connected right now. One of the things about St. Louis, I think we all love St. Louis in many ways because it has kind of a small town feel, but part of that's because we just centralize. You know, we have these little islands that people kind of gravitate to. and not a lot of good connections between them. And so that's what this project's going to do. It's going to create these connections along the way, and paying tribute to the culture and the history of the different communities it connects in the process.
That's cool. That's cool. And where are you all thinking about putting a central hub?
Tell you what, if you for exactly, you can go to our website.
Okay.
It's bricklinegreenway.org. You can look it up and look at the maps there. But it's going to connect somewhere around Kings Highway, that area. And so, actually, I believe the Grand Metrolink station is really going to be the big hub for the north, south, and east, west is where things will kind of connect together. But it's going to be a great place, a way for people to get to places. And one of the parts of the project that we're really excited about is the section between Harris-Stowe and where the new Major League Soccer Stadium is going to be. In the grand scheme of things, sadly, it's not that long ago, but in the 1950s, there was a community there that was primarily an African-American community that was removed as part of the Highway 64 project called Mill Creek Valley. And so we have an artist that we're working with named Damon Davis who's creating these sculpture projects. And so that entire stretch, there's going to be a lot of tribute paid to the history of that community. And so it's going to be one of those things that not only are you going to be able to make that connection, but you're also be able to learn about that once thriving community that was removed and kind of help pay tribute to those people.
Absolutely. That is really cool. And then my last question about that project, is it already like in the works? And if so, like how long do you think that people should be expecting it to take?
It is in the works, but this is such a big project. It's going to be almost 20 miles of different greenways connecting in here. And things like this, there's a lot of things that go into it, from the rights of the land to be able to build on. We don't use eminent domain. We can't just condemn something and say we're building a greenway here. So we have to work with, and most of this is what you call built infrastructure. So there's already buildings, there's already parking lots, there's already roads. And so we're trying to find ways that we can be smart about things, add this new infrastructure without interrupting too much of the existing infrastructure, and benefiting everyone along the way. Absolutely. And so that takes a lot of planning. And planning really only works when you have a lot of input. And so right now we have teams that are very active in community engagement, that are very active in talking to people one-on-one in meetings, putting tents up at different events. Juneteenth this weekend, I think we're going to be at 4 different places talking to people to find out what they want, what they like, what they want to see, what they want this to feel like. And because really it's important for this to kind of feel like the people we're trying to work with. And so that process is going on. Certain portions of the project are moving much quicker because there's already construction projects planned. And so we can tie in with those projects and make something happen. But other parts are going to take a while. And so I think this is kind of a project that we portions of it, I think people will start seeing on the ground within the next 2 to 3 years. But the full connections we want to get are probably, could be 10 years and beyond. Okay. It's just a lot of things that have to come into place. And it's also a lot of money. We are also very active in working with the philanthropic and the corporate communities, because this is also something that benefits businesses. Because this is something that people will be able to bike and ride scooters or walk to work. And a lot of people, especially in that downtown and the Cortex, business districts, they don't want to have to drive every day. They want other ways to get to work. They want to be able to enjoy the green space on their way in, to kind of get that peace on the way in from work and that decompression on the way home. And so it's an amenity that a lot of people are excited to have. But to get there and get to the point where we can actually, cut the ribbon on all 20 miles or so, it's going to be a number of years.
Okay.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? You know what time it is. It's time for another StitchCast Studio Arts Interlude. That's right. It's time to pick the city up. This week, we have a Story Stitches original piece entitled Missouri Waltz.
Hush-a-bye, my baby, slumber time is coming soon. Rest your head up on my chest while daddy hums a tune. The Sandman is calling, where shadows are falling, while the salt breezes sigh as in days long gone by. Way down in Missouri, where I heard this melody when I was a little child, upon my papa's knee, the old folks were humming, the bugs were a-buzzing, so sweet and low. Usher by my baby, all the stars are coming out. Seems I hear those little frogs out jumping in the pond. While the salt breezes sigh through the grass so high, way down in Missouri, where I heard this melody, where the prairies ramble on, and the bison roam so free. The old folks are humming, and the birds were buzzing, so sweet and low.
So real quick, I want to ask you all another personal question. Has there ever been a time when, some type of greenery inspired you creatively? Could you all share a story?
Yeah, this one I kind of hold kind of dear to me because it's one of my favorite stories. So this is how I started crumping. This has really got me big into my dance career to this day. I was at Forest Park and I happened to stumble across a dance battle that was going on. And I kind of just fumbled my way into the crowd, and I was just seeing everybody just dancing, in the open space. The energy was real nice, and it kind of inspired me to just pursue this dance style. Since I became one of the best in our city now. So it kind of feel good that I was there at Forest Park at that moment. It kind of felt like it was meant to be. Yeah.
Do you ever go back and revisit that?
Yeah, I kind of visit just to take it in. You know what I'm saying? Maybe at nighttime, just just to remember where I came from, and just to be inspired on what's forward for me or my next chapter in life.
So you're one of the best?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like if I'm in your presence, I want to see this.
You might have to give us a little something afterwards. Yeah, definitely. That's a great story. Anybody else?
Yeah. For me, well, before I was strictly on figure type people, but over the school year, in terms of my painting and drawing classes, I was doing more landscapes, which I didn't ever think about or think was special. I was always kind of scared away from it, but I found that a lot of my style works well for landscape. And one interesting thing is that you interpret it differently depending on the person. So the way somebody else paints a landscape looks completely different from how the next person paints it, which was something that I didn't think about. You think, no, you just paint it like this, be done. But the way we see color, the way we see line is different depending on the person. So that was something new that I found over college.
That's really interesting. So do you right? Is there any one particular thing in the landscape that you really like and add in the most detail to, or is it
just deep in the forest? Actually, one of my art professors, he does something with the Japanese kudzu line. So he'll do sketches and studies in the kudzu, and then come back to the studio and paint it these large 6-foot paintings.
Wow.
Different kudzu, and then hang it on hospitals and the way. So just being influenced by him inspired me a lot in terms of process, and honestly his line work, I'll copy it.
That's cool. That's cool to hear.
Yeah. So I've always had an appreciation for photography and video, and that's really what I do. So much of my work at GRG is all about documenting the work we do. A few years ago, though, I learned about bees. And St. Louis actually has one of the most diverse bee populations in North America.
Wow.
We have more kinds of bees that live in St. Louis than anywhere else.
Wow.
And so I started.
Fun fact.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And so I was making a video about bees along the greenways, and so I was getting so frustrated trying to get good video of bees because they move so quick, and so I started to learn about them and what the right times of day were to try to shoot them. And in that process of trying to document bees along the greenways and outside, I became in love with the tiny things around me and things that I never even thought about. And so looking at like the flowers sitting here behind you, I'm seeing, bees buzz in and out. I see butterflies come in and other things. And so part of it's also, I guess I've always just been a big guy. And so now I've never really thought about all those things down below me, down on the ground. And so it's just kind of, if it weren't for that experience being outside and trying to capture that one bee, I would have never really thought about it. And there's this whole ecosystem that I've kind of now become really obsessed with, trying to capture imagery of, and it's chased me down a few rabbit holes. Both, and it's hit my wallet pretty hard too. but I love it.
Yeah, definitely. That makes me think. So this isn't my story. It's kind of like a side story to my story. Definitely, you all stories combined. It makes me think about the other day. I had a conversation with my cousin. And she was saying how she loves watching Bob Ross. And I was like, yeah, I just started watching him too. Like, like just out the blue, I just was like, let me check this guy out,
It's soothing.
Yeah, it is. And she was saying how, watching him paint these pictures really made her eyes open up to like more detail. Like, we just like walk past trees, but she was like, no, like she actually is stopping like wow. That's a beautiful tree, like, you don't usually, most people usually don't do that, it's like, especially on our daily commutes, we're just like, kind of like blurring out everything else. So yeah, I love what you said. For me, actually, it's similar to yours, is Forest Park, again. That's how that's a really prominent park in my life. But Forest Park, so like, at one point in time, so I'm a writer, and I was having like this major writer's block. Like I didn't feel really inspired. And even when I did write, it didn't feel right, So I don't know, something just told me like turn into the park and just drive around. And like literally as I started driving, like I felt like my mind just opened up and like words just started flowing together. And I'm just like, okay, well, let me get out. Let me walk around, and I'm like walking, and then I found like this perfect bench in the shade, like with all this like greenery and these flowers around it, and I just sat down and like took like 2 almost 10-minute voice recordings, so it's just like, it just really opened me up, and I guess, not being there after like a month or so really kind of refreshed, and like rejuvenated my creativity. So yeah, that's my backstory.
Just had to recharge.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a question. Like, what is it like working with that sculpture artist and like just artists in general in the ways that they can help improve the project?
Art is just so important to something like this because not to sound cliche, but it is a universal language. I mean, you can see something and you can feel it, but at the same time someone else can see the same thing and they might feel something a little different, and so it's kind of, it has just this power that few things do. And so on a project like the Brick Line, we knew from the beginning that art had to be part of it because it's just such a monumental thing. And in this case, Damon Davis, he's a multidisciplinary artist working in St. Louis. He's a filmmaker. He does everything. The guy's amazing. And when he started thinking about this project in this community, Mill Creek Valley, he had never really heard of it before that. Like a lot of people in St. Louis, it's unfortunately really been kind of wiped from our memories, even though it was only 70 years ago. The curse of a short-term memory, we've forgotten. So he kind of started digging into this process, and he got inspired by this idea of an hourglass, how he could actually kind of capture it and like freeze time and that moment in time. And the initial thought process is, what if you could actually take dirt from there and kind of hoist it up in a sculpture kind of thing? So that's where the idea evolved from. Not every project we do has art involved. A lot of it really depends upon the nature of the project and where it's at, and a lot of it is operations and maintenance, because you put something out there, it's got to be taken care of. And so this kind of thing that we put in places where we know that there's partners and community members who are going to care and love it and make it part of theirs. But just like everything else in the Greenway, it has to really fit. You appreciate something much more when it's a fair representation, a true representation of the community. If it's just something like just this monolith that we stuck out there in the middle of nowhere, people to kind of look at it, scratch their head, and like, okay, and they move on. But there are other projects where we have, it's just been a good fit. In St. Charles County, there's a Greenway, the Boschert Greenway, and when that was being constructed, they're like, you know what? We have this perfect spot that we need a really big sculpture. And they put bids out there and got proposals, and this welder from Maplewood came up with this idea to make a giant flower using only bicycle parts. So he made this 30-foot tall flower with bike frames as pedals and wheels as the blooms. And I remember him telling me the story that he made a 30-foot tall flower but only had a 20-foot tall shop. So there were some challenges to go to it, but it fit that project and fit that place and it fit that space. And I think that's really what comes down to. Art is most powerful when it's a reflection of the space around it. And so whenever we can, that's something we do like to use.
Yeah, that's cool. I like how you're talking about that when we're in the sculpture park.
Yeah, I mean,
the eyeball behind us.
Yeah. So with this project too, because I don't know, we don't know who's going to listen to this, but if somebody listens to this and they have their own organization or some type of community service or something, and they want to kind of get in on the project with you all in their community, how would they do that?
Yeah, so they would reach out to us and let us know, who they are, what they are looking for. And we have members of our team who specifically work on areas of civic and community engagement. And so they're meeting with these kinds of organizations. And so depending upon what they might be looking for or what they have in mind, we would meet with them, find out how we might be able to collaborate together, and see if there's something that we'd be able to find a mutual way that we could both benefit from it.
Okay. Sounds good. And then my last question that I have is, because I know you just talked about a Greenway out in St. Charles, and people might not know that we have Greenways that close to us. Do you all have like a directory on your website at all?
Yeah, we do. We have you can go to our website, greatriversgreenway.org. Okay. And we have right now 128 miles already constructed throughout St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County. Okay. And, for the most part, most areas in our region are probably only a few miles away from Greenway. We have more work to be done, though. Okay. We ultimately want to have a 600-mile network connecting and providing many options for people to be able to get around. It's actually interesting. You think about transportation, and the majority of trips people take are actually I would say 2/3 of trips people take are bikeable. They're within less than 5 miles. Most people can bike that if you provide them a better way to get there. Because right now, so many of the ways you get from to and fro, you're having to ride on the street, and people aren't comfortable doing that. And unfortunately, some of the infrastructure in our region isn't in the greatest shape and not really meant for that. So we're trying to provide a better option for people to be able to do those things. And with that, then becomes the personal benefits of, hey, I got my sweat on while getting going to pick up my groceries. And it reduces that environmental impact, reduces the congestion, smog, all those other things. And so there's a lot of benefits that come if we can just run our errands more often on foot or by bike. And so that's what we're trying to do, is create opportunities for people to be able to do that, or even better, get to work or connect to transit or get around town in a way that's a little better for everybody.
Absolutely. And I know I said that was my last question, but hearing you talk made me think, do you know if there are any other organizations doing what Great Rivers is trying to do?
There are, in different ways in different places. Okay. So we actually have a sister organization, the Metro East Parks and Recreation District, that operates in Illinois. And so they are working with the different transit districts there to kind of expand trail districts and opportunities for people to be able to commute in different ways than by car. And then there's other organizations even within our region and municipalities. So we actually work with almost 200 different organizations just in our 3-county region. Wow. And some of those are municipalities, and they're looking at things that they can do to improve their own mobility for their own residents. There's organizations like TrailNet who put a lot of research and study into different connections that can make sense and street development plans. And so there are organizations who are working together, and so we just try to be one of those and collaborate with them as much as possible. And when we see projects that it makes sense for us to team up together on, we do that.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's actually, opportunity things. So right now we're doing an extension of the St. Vincent Greenway along the Rock Road.
Okay.
And what's made that possible is that MoDOT was already or Missouri Department of Transportation was already going to be doing some road work there.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we can just add an extension of the Greenway as part of the work they're already doing. And it makes it much more effective and efficient for everybody.
Yeah.
And plus, since we're a tax-supported organization, it's a less impact that we have to put into the tax dollars that come in.
That's cool. That's so good to hear. Yeah. I just wanted you to spew all that out, just like I said, in case anybody's listening to this and, interested, because they understand the importance of these things in the community, and probably want them like right away. But of course, it takes time.
It does take time. We have a project we've been working on, the Maylene Greenway, that's many years in the works, that's going to connect some communities in the North County area.
Okay.
And so we've built the first section of it in Bellefontaine County Park a few years ago, but we're currently, in works to do extensions into Ferguson and different parts in that community, different neighborhoods and communities along that way. But it just takes time. And a lot of times, unfortunately, you go through the process, you plan, and then you run into a roadblock that says this plan is not going to work. And so you got to go back. And so it's an evolving process. And so what we try to do as much as possible is keep the community involved along the way. Because there's nothing worse than us coming in, making a big show, hey, we're going to build a Greenway, and then disappearing for 10 years while we just go plan. And then suddenly we show up and say, hey, we're building the Greenway. And it's like, what Greenway?
Right.
So we want to keep people engaged along the way. And so some of the things we always like to ask people in the process, like, what do you want? What would you like to see? And so like you guys, what if you were out on a Greenway or trail, what are some of the things that you guys would want to see?
That's a good question. Anybody want to answer that first?
That sculpture, that sounds bad.
Yeah, I would second that too. I guess for me, different types of flowers, like, things that we don't normally see in St. Louis, I guess. Just to kind of, just let your eyes see something different, I think that means a lot, just to see some weird stuff, Yeah, that'll make you like Google it, or something like that. Yeah.
But there's an app I highly recommend. It's called iNaturalist. You can just take a picture of a flower, and it'll tell you what it is.
Wow.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it also works with bugs, snakes, and all kinds of other things, too.
Yeah.
So, helps you learn more about what's around you.
Yeah, I would want to see something like that then, I guess.
I like to see like a sculpture that represent like their part of their neighborhood or the municipality, just to show like where they came from. A different part of St. Louis, just to see what they got going on over there.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So that's the kind of things we do. That's step one. We just talk to people and see what they want, and then as much as possible, we try to make that happen. And then, along the way, we have check-ins, and we say, here's what we've come up with so far. What do you think? And then we listen to the new feedback. And
I like that.
And the important part is it's not even just asking the questions; it's making sure people are heard, and that takes some effort because the people feel like they are heard. Because we are coming into a lot of communities, and much like Mill Creek, there's a sad history of people coming in with infrastructure projects, not always with the best intentions.
Yeah.
So for us, we really want to make sure that we come in authentically.
Yeah.
With good amount of authenticity, human decency, and really putting people first.
Yeah.
And that's really what these spaces are about, is putting people at the forefront and whatever their needs and uses and the places they want to go and the things they want to see are.
That's great. I'm pretty sure that people appreciate that a lot, just in case you all don't hear it, we appreciate that, keeping everyone in that process. So yeah, if you all want to know more, definitely go to their website. Seth, again, we really appreciate you for coming out here and having this conversation with us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. And thanks you guys for tagging along. And everybody, you have just listened to another episode of StitchCast Studio. We hope that you tune in to the next one, and we're out.
Peace in the Prairie is presented with support from Missouri Arts Council, a state agency which receives support from the state of Missouri and the National Endowment for the Arts. Additional support is provided by the Spirit of St. Louis Women's Fund, Missouri Foundation for Health, City of St. Louis Youth at-Risk Crime Prevention Grant of 2020, Stewart Family Foundation, and Kranzberg Arts Foundation.
They say who that, but you already knew that. That be them story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches, story stitches.